All right, I can assume that you do not have unlimited time, and I can also assume that you probably do not have unlimited money. And there is a lot of information that gets thrown around on what you should be doing from a fitness standpoint. So it's kind of hard to decipher where you should prioritize your time and money. So here are my hierarchy of needs for getting in shape. And let me clarify what I mean by getting in shape. That considers having a healthy body composition. So fat to muscle mass and lean mass. Being able to perform day-to-day tasks without pain or limitations or getting out of breath, being aerobically fit. Those are kind of all of the things that I would consider being in shape. So, without further ado, number one, the most foundational aspect of any fitness plan is going to be strength training. Now, I bounce back and forth for a split second on if number one should be strength training or if it should be nutrition. And really, at the end of the day, you cannot by any means get in shape without strength training. And there is a small argument to be made that you could potentially get in better shape with a below average diet. But strength training is the foundation. You know that if you are working with me on one-on-one online fitness coaching, that this is a major piece of what we do, and that is because strength training is the key to longevity. It checks so many boxes. When we talk about prioritizing your time and using your time efficiently, there is not a more efficient manner for your fitness outside of strength training. You are building muscle. You are strengthening your joints and your ligaments and your tendons. You are improving your performance. And I don't mean your sport athletic performance, I mean your day-to-day life performance. You're reducing the risk of injury like osteoporosis and a laundry list of other chronic diseases. So just a few touch points on kind of what your strength training should look like. 2 to 3 times a week. It definitely should not be every day, but a couple times a week, prioritizing full body compound movements. That tends to be the most efficient for adults. But again, when you are going to put your resources and your time into something for your health to get a return, strength training has the best return on investment. Number two is going to be your nutrition. So the second layer here, the second part of the foundation is your nutrition. These two kind of are like 1A is strength training and 1B is nutrition. They go pretty hand in hand. Now, again, we're talking about how to invest your time and how to invest your resources. From a nutrition standpoint, I would say that your time is the biggest investment. And when I speak on that, I mean you are preparing. You are going out of your way to cook your own meals. That's kind of what I mean by your investment. Because really from a financial means, I know there are quality differences from a financial situation, but from a health standpoint, getting foods that are low processed or low in trans fats, high in protein, high in other nutrients, you can get by on a relatively lower end financial budget and still have a highly nutritious diet. So again, this one from a nutrition standpoint, the biggest investment that you're making is from your time. But your nutrition, you should look at that as my body composition. That is how I'm going to support a healthy fat to muscle mass ratio. Some other things from a nutritional standpoint are going to be your bodily function. So like your immune health, your brain health, digestion, again, reducing the risk of chronic diseases, kind of like strength training. And when we look at nutrition, the three things that you should focus on, and this is very nuanced and very personalized, so putting this 3 words on it does not really do it justice, but the 3 things that you should focus on are your fiber intake, 20 to 30 grams per day of fiber. Your protein intake, normally I recommend 0.8 to 1.5 grams per kilogram of body weight. And then your overall caloric intake, making sure that that is at a level and at a number that meets your nutrient needs, promotes energy levels and allows you to function, but then also limits excess body fat. So moving on back to our pyramid, the third layer that we have that I kind of would say is right there in the middle is going to be cardio. And this is high intensity cardio and this is low intensity cardio. I'm kind of putting them in the same category. Cardio is obviously important, but talking about where you're going to spend your time and where you're going to spend your money, I would say this is a middle tier form of exercise because really it's not that financially expensive, unless you're buying like the top of the line cardio equipment, like going out and doing a brisk walk pretty much checks every box that you need to from a cardio standpoint. And that is about as free and accessible as it gets. And if you are strength training, then you are also checking a lot of the boxes that cardio provides. So if you are that limited on time and that limited on resources, I would recommend prioritizing strength training first. And then, in another time in your life when you are more available, you can fit in cardio. But your cardio health is your heart health and your longevity. Lowering your blood pressure, lowering your resting heart rate. Um, there are a lot of hormonal balances and just bodily functions again that are improved by improving your cardiovascular fitness. So kind of what I recommend is 150 minutes of steady state. That would be like a moderate. You could still hold a conversation while you're doing it. Again, walking is a great example of that. That would be like 5 30-minute bouts throughout the week. So 5 30-minute walks. Or you could do 75 minutes of vigorous activity. That would be like 3 25-minute bouts. That would be your high intensity interval training. Your HIIT class. That would be your hill sprints. That would be just where you are not able to hold a conversation. You know what that feels like. Your heart is beating relatively fast. It is somewhat brings on some level of discomfort. That is kind of where I would categorize vigorous cardio. However, best case scenario, as you can imagine, because everything in fitness is balance and moderation, the best case is a combination of both. Moving on back to our pyramid. Now we get into some of the more nitty gritty nuanced things that I wouldn't spend as much time and money on. And the fourth one is rest. And don't hear me the wrong way. Like rest is super, super critical to just like your day-to-day life. However, when it comes down to your resources and your time, really there's not a lot to invest into it outside of, hey, I'm going to sleep 8 hours instead of 7 hours. So that's sacrificing a whole hour out of my day. You're not really going to be spending a lot of money on your rest. Maybe you are buying a magnesium supplement. Or you are putting a lot of money into a high-end mattress. But outside of that, it's really more of a time and a habitual, your habits throughout the day type of investment. What does rest do for us? Well, muscle growth and repair. It's huge for that. It improves your performance. If you are better rested, you're probably going to do better in the gym, which is going to lead to better results. It helps you balance your hormones better. I know that when I don't sleep well, I am way hungrier throughout the day because my hunger hormones are shot up. So rest is important, but again, there's not really a lot of ways that we can put that financial and or time investment or resources into it. A couple of things that I highly encourage you to focus on when it comes to a resting standpoint is a consistent sleep schedule. Going to bed at the same time, waking up at the same time, getting off your phone before bed. You should at a minimum not go on your phone 15 minutes before you try to go to sleep. If you're laying there scrolling, TikTok or Instagram Reels, and then you just throw your phone off to the side and flick off the light, like that is obviously going to impact the quality of your sleep. And the same thing with caffeine. Try to have 8 hours between the last caffeine dose and the time you go to bed. If you want to go to bed at 10, then cut the caffeine at 2. Again, yes, you might fall asleep, but your quality of sleep will be impacted if you have caffeine in your system. So those are some things that you can invest in. But again, more so than anything, it's a habitual standpoint. Okay, last but not least, the top point of the pyramid, the least important, and really the reason that I made this presentation in the first place is your supplements and recovery modalities. The reason I made the presentation is because this is where people spend the most amount of money, and it is the least important to your overall health and your fitness. You are buying a $3,000 cold plunge, and that is not doing anything when it comes to, hey, I'm going to have a healthy body composition. I'm going to be strong and be able to do things throughout my day-to-day life. So this is something that after all of the other 4 things are in check and you are prioritizing them and you have a good routine on them, then this is something that you can start to invest in financially and time-wise. From a supplement standpoint, really the only things that I would recommend are a creatine supplement, a very simple basic protein supplement, and then a fish oil or a vitamin D or C or just a multivitamin if you wish. But again, you should be trying to get all of those throughout your day-to-day diet as well. And then from a recovery modality, a sauna feels good. A cold plunge does feel good. Don't get me wrong. I love jumping in a mountain lake. I love taking a cold shower. But again, those are more preference-based. Same thing with the sauna. I like a sauna. I like a steam room. But again, that's my preference. That's because I like it. I would not go encourage somebody else to invest their time or their money in one of those from an overall fitness standpoint, because there are a whole laundry list of other things that we can invest our resources in outside of recovery modalities. So that is really the entirety of Paul's hierarchy of needs for getting in shape. Again, strength training is your first and foremost, and then your nutrition, and then cardio. That's going to be low and high intensity cardio, and then rest, and then your supplements and your recovery modalities. But really, at the end of the day, a majority of your resources should be on strength training and nutrition. If you have any questions, if you think I am wrong and want to have a conversation about any of the things that I discussed, then please shoot me a message. I am always open to that conversation. Keep working hard, keep getting after it, and keep prioritizing your health.